So this is Act 3. It's your first real difficulty spike in the game, and Babylon here is your trial by fire. If you can get through Babylon, you'll be able to get through the rest of the Act 2. There's one more difficulty spike after the Great Wall of China, but we'll get into that later. For now, what you want to have from Act 2 is at least a cold resist ring. Eventually, you're going to want to have a swap ring for each element, lightning, fire, and cold. Maybe 2 swap rings if you really need to max it out. But throughout Act 3, you just need moderate elemental resists, swap when necessary. Vitality is important. There's a lot of percent health damage effects. So those come in the form of shouts and stuff like that. Also straight vitality damage from ghosts, of course, Typhoon. And also in the second half of Act 3, there's a lot of pierce damage. Pierce damage from spears and bows. Every time you see a spear or a bow, you know there's going to be probably 25% of that damage as pierce or more. So what makes Babylon so hard? Well, it just seems like every individual creature hits a lot harder. Even things like these spiders, you remember spiders from Act 1, they're totally impotent, they don't do anything. But also, as you'll see here pretty soon, the Ichthyans. So just watch here. Boom. So that's a shotgun effect, okay? That's why you really need the cold resist. If I didn't have cold resist here, I would have been dead there. That's a short-ranged ability, and what makes it really lethal is it shotguns for 3 projectiles, and the, the Lords of the Deep, I think they're called, that cast it, they just look like regular Ichthyans. Man, they have maces, they don't have any armor. You can easily fool yourself into saying, oh, there's a guy with a staff, let me mouse over him. Oh, it's just a shaman. No problem. Then you run in, and boom, you get shotgunned. And that ability is on such a short range that it's likely if you get hit, you'll get hit by all 3 projectiles. Also noteworthy in Babylon were those bog creepers. You just saw the guy who barfed 3 poison projectiles at me. They do a lot of damage. I mean, I think I might have full poison res at this point. And if I got hit just straight up from one of those things, I might be close to death. So if there were 2 of them, I would be especially dead. You know, dead. If there was one of those and maybe a couple of spiders or something hitting me, that could also be lethal. Really, they're just never worth fighting. You're going to encounter them a couple more times throughout the game. Really, just ignore them, run by them. If you really need viney growth, kill the little dendroid-looking things. There's that shotgun again. But the nice thing about having swap rings is you can tailor what you need for the damage, but you can also tailor the relic you're putting into them. So for the most part, you're going to want to use a Dionysus wineskin. Physical damage in this game is insane. It's leaps and bounds above the other damage types in terms of, you know, what's dangerous to you all the time. So really, I mean, Demon's Blood is really good, but you could just swap to it when necessary. You'll get a feel for when there's a lot of vitality coming, and it's frequent, but physical is more frequent. So if you can have a pair of swap rings or something like that that have just Dionysus wineskin, that's perfect. Also the same with Demon's Blood, and you just swap them on the whim. Most of the time you'll be wearing the wineskin version. Every now and then you would switch to the Demon's Blood. So here in the Temple of Marduk, there's another annoying enemy. It's those sort of goo-looking things. They're magical. 1, they're hard to kill. I rarely ever have a character that can kill them quickly. And 2, they slow you, and that slow is even worse in Epic and Legendary. There aren't too many effects in this game that protect you against slow. I mean, by few, you can count them on 2 hands. There's very, very, very few. So really, just skip them. Try to dodge that projectile and just run away. Here in level 1, you want to stick to the south. The north leads you to a dead end. And you can see these fire sprites. You can grind these for Demon's Blood. They have the demon tag, but there are ice versions of these guys later. Those are the guys I prefer to grind. I'll show you that farming spot later on, but just note that these fire sprites are farmable. They appear throughout the act. The Yuris too, but as always, Yuris are terrible at dropping Demon's Blood. But like I said, it's really just the individual creatures, every single one, doing more damage. That's what makes this difficulty spike so noticeable. things like spiders, later on crabs, little plants, you know, tiny raptor babies, everything is going to hit hard starting now. And it gets worse and worse later, as you'll see in Act 4. Act 4 is just a nightmare. But kind of the age of running from pack to pack, gathering huge groups of mobs and just standing in the middle, that's kind of over until you get Leech or until your character gets super, super strong. So here's the boss, Chimera. He has two sort of relevant damage types. One is that Fire Breath. You can dodge it by sidestepping, but it's pretty hard. It's a wide cone. The other is a PB AoE, lightning ability, so that's point blank AoE. You can see it looks, graphically, it looks large, but it's really only going to hit you if you're in melee range. So you might want to consider lightning resistance if you're melee. Otherwise, just get some fire and you're fine. The lightning hits really hard in higher difficulties, just by the way. And that Fire Breath is on a cadence, so you can sidestep it if you want to. So here's Phaon. Let me guess, you have failed.
I have failed.
Yeah.
The practitioner of magic has special needs.
So out here, this is the best spot in the whole game to farm money. So on every difficulty, if you want to shore up on your cash in order to buy really anything you find, and you're going to want to be able to buy anything you find from the vendor, this is where you get your cash. I recommend no matter what you're doing, what kind of character you're playing, how you get your gear, if you're inheriting, doesn't matter. You're going to want to farm here for a decent amount of time, a few runs at the very least. What makes it so good is that these guys have that aura that we talked about in episodes 1 and 2. They can drop more stuff. Tons of stuff. You have full bag space by now. There's tons of these guys, so you can fully, you know, pack those bags full of stuff to sell. And it's an easy, short, tight run. I mean, there's not a lot of running around. You just kill these Ichthyans. Also, the vendor has a higher gold cap. Gold caps per vendor, they increase as you go on through the game. I think right now it's 50k. Not only that, but these Ichthyans actually drop a decent amount of monster infrequence.
Have a look.
If you're a conqueror and you like the mace sort of playstyle with stuns, then you can get an Ichthian Whomper. There's a decent harpoon, I think, for bleeding characters, or really if you're using a spear anyway. So I'll run through it again one more time just so you can see.
Well then.
My favorite thing to grind here is Ichthian helmets. So starting in Act 3, just like in Act 2 where you're looking for the annulling prefix, in Act 3 there's another prefix called Hallowed that appears on helmets. Now up until recently I've farmed it mostly here by getting Ichthian Helms until it rolled the Hallowed prefix. Ichthian Helms is a monster infrequent, by the way, so you have to pick up every single one and look at them. But I recently found out a lot of people vendor farm for them, so that's something I'm going to try later on in this act. I knew vendor farming was a thing. I have found many Hallowed Helms off the vendor before, but I've never actually tried vendor farming for them. So anyway, by this point in the game, you're going to want to have, I would say at the very least, 1500 health. I might be coming up short, but that's okay. I could break my own rules. And in terms of defensive ability, 200 DA seems pretty good. You have to think that you're wearing Stonebinder's cuffs. I mean, you are wearing Stonebinder's cuffs, I assume. So you're going to have 127 dex. That's 127 DA, and then a little bit through gear. About 200 is what you want. And that stuff is in addition to your resists, of course. You're going to want your swap rings. If you don't have them now, start vendor shopping. Those Ichthyans as well, I mentioned the Ichthian helmet, that's an option for intellect users, which is pretty rare. You'll find if you're an intellect user, you're going to get a lot of mileage out of monster infrequence. Every character is going to get a lot of mileage out of it, but your options are very limited as an intellect user. There's also a chess piece you can farm for whatever affix you're after. We're not at the point of the game yet where you need to start getting like a Pierce swap chess piece or something like that. That'll be next act, but for now you can just simply upgrade if you're still using recovery gear. You'll walk away probably with some decent upgrades if you farm there long enough, and a ton of money in order to buy to your heart's content whatever vendors are selling.
East, I see them go west. Never have I seen so many monsters. But what can I do for you?
So if you want to know how I bought potions so quickly there, I just used 2 fingers on my mouse, that's all. Just play it like a drum. Unfortunately, in this game, you can't buy in bulk. So that means you have to resort to just clicking like a maniac. So besides that money farm spot, which again, best spot in the game for cash, there's a couple other farm spots that I like here that I'll utilize in this video, like the Demon's Blood farming spot. It's coming up. You'll see when I enter this cave that there's the frost version of those fire spirits, and also some Jinn. The Jinn are dangerous. The frost spirits can also freeze you, so you don't want to over-pull here. They might not look lethal, but they are, because they can freeze you. They can chain freeze you. There it is. That's pretty bad. That'll get you killed. But these are the guys I farm. The farming spot's a little bit later. I also farm Saber-Tooth Claws, which is a sword. It's a very fast sword. And again, in this game, if you're looking to up your damage, just go with the very reliable low magic sort of combination of fast attack speed, flat damage, and procs. So Saber-Tooth Claw is ideal for that sort of mindset. We'll grind it later. Again, I'll show that spot off. Pang Claws. If you're using a Saber-Tooth Claw, Pang Claw is a very good physical damage charm that you can put on your weapons. You get them through these pangs. You can farm really anywhere. It's most often going to be a shrine farm. I mean, you get a certain resurrection shrine, and then you farm from there. And of course, you can farm the bosses too. So here's that shrine. It's a reverse shrine farm, so you want to get the shrine and then go backwards. So you know you're at the right shrine because it's right after you save this dude. Don't forget about him. Just like in Act 1 and 2, there is some stranded, poor fellow. You need to save him. No one else will. Who else is going to be up in this mountain? I have no idea. He didn't even have shoes. What makes this grind good is that there's nothing except for demons. I mean, there's no pangs, there's not a lot of walking. There's a high chance you'll get a mystic chest, which is nice if you're looking for upgrades. I've gotten several blues while grinding this stuff before. And many, many, many greens. The only reason I think I wouldn't farm an Ichthian Helm back at that money spot is if I knew I was getting a Hallowed Helm. I mean, Hallowed Helm is a given, I think, for Act 3. It's just so good. It gives +1 skills, and it gives a bunch of vitality resist. The only reason I wouldn't get a Hallowed Helm or an Ichthian Helm is if I already had something great. The only item that stands out to me in the helmet slot that could beat, at this point, a Hallowed Helm would be maybe a Chromatic Helm or a Chromatic Diadem. They can start dropping in Act 2. Several times I have gotten that item. It is really, really, really good for this point in the game. There's also not a lot of poison requirements in this act, which is kind of unique. Poison is a very common reoccurring resist type. Generally, it's something you want to have on you all the time. So if you got all this armor with pristine plumage on it, you can start looking for, I don't know, something with pierce resistance or bleed resistance. Bleed isn't important at all in normal mode, but it becomes important in epic. So I'd say really just get Pierce. A Pierce chest piece, maybe a Pierce swap boots or something like that. And you can put, I don't know, Boar's Hide. If you get the completion bonus, that gives piercing resistance. Those are a good addition. You'll get a lot more mileage out of that set of gear than you will a poison res set of gear. That's all I'm saying. And you need to upgrade your armor anyway. Armor does make a difference in this game, since there's not a lot of ways you can mitigate physical. Any little bit helps. So you don't want to have, especially your chest piece, being low on armor. Also, this is the first part of the game where you need to start worrying about tertiary resists. You saw we got frozen earlier. So the tertiary resists are freeze resist, entrapment resist, stun resist, which is the most important, and sleep, which is not important at all. You'll get freeze resist, so this is assuming you're not playing a defense character. Defense characters get a lot of tertiary resists. But you'll get entrapment resist if you're a hunter as well. You can also get it with a new charm in Act 5, just in time for when we'll need it, to be frank. Stun resist you get through your demon's blood, so if you're really worried about stuns, which do happen throughout the game, you can get that through demon's blood, which you'll usually have at least one equipped at all time. That's enough stun resist, really. If you're really looking to farm someone like Barmanu, I mean, you probably won't get stunned if you know how to fight him, but just in case, you know, you don't want to die. Freeze resist is very common in Act 5. It can also kill you in Act 3 and Act 4. You can get that through the new, what is it called? Primal Magma for your Stonebinder's Cuffs. It's a gloves-only charm. Very good. It provides 50%. Otherwise, it's not too uncommon to find in gear and stuff like that. So once you transition from snow into grassland, you want to start thinking about that Mystery in the Mountains quest that we got at the village. Before you reach that wooden bridge that we just passed, you want to go north, up into the mountains. You'll reach this dude's house. There's this dude. This area right across the bridge is actually pretty dangerous. There's a lot of trappers here. Trappers, believe it or not, trap you, and that lets all the other things munch you to death. This cave is also very dangerous. You can see I failed to pull 2, but usually I like to pull 2 of these guys at once. They do a ton of vitality damage, and I guarantee it, if you just run in there and start fighting them, you're gonna die. Unless you have full vitality, which at this point you probably don't have a Hallowed Helm unless you farmed the Ichthian version. So you're not going to be able to fully mitigate all that damage, and it's pretty intense damage too. The tertiary resist that has the fewest option is slow. I think they added a charm. Is it Ajax? Maybe Ajax has been in the game for a long time. I think it was actually an Immortal Throne charm. That one does it. There's a couple other items that do it. We'll talk about slow res a little bit more in Act 5. So here's that dude's son. Once you talk to him, that's when you know you're next to Barmanu, which is the resolution to this whole quest line. It's the first cave. You can see it when you're talking to him. Barmanu's famous. I mean, he's killed many a player who, you know, they're just out looking for the loot. They got squashed by meteors. I think the meteors were actually nerfed in Anniversary Edition. But they're still gonna kill you. I mean, so here's the philosophy. People and guides will tell you to get cold res for this fight. I say don't bother with cold res at all. The reason for that is if you do get hit by these meteors, you're dead. You might as well be dead. So it's best just to not get hit by the meteors. I would rather you get stun res, just in case you don't dodge the stun. That way with stun res, you'll always be able to dodge the meteors. Also, kill all of the ads right outside of him. He's on this plateau. Some of them are trappers that will trap you. If you get trapped, you can't dodge the stun. If you get stunned, it's hard to dodge the meteor. You know where I'm going with that. So there's the meteor. Like everyone else who does meteors, I guess they summon it by throwing their arms up in the air. That's how you summon meteors, I guess. So when you see that, just run away. His stun is via a Cyclops scream, so you dodge it just like you would with Cyclops. And that's it. I mean, it's a cadence-based fight. Bait out the first stun, and from then on, just have an internal timer. It's a good warm-up for Typhon, actually, because there's a very similar combination of cadence sort of ability to dodge, as well as random incoming meteors. So there's a lot to dodge on Typhon, and you'll get a good warm-up if you kill Barmanu a few times. And this cave here is the Yeti Cave. So we're pretty close to another boss, actually. Now you can clear as much of this cave as you want. Sometimes if you get that shrine, you can take it all the way to Yeti. If you run and you don't stop along the way at all, you can actually use it to kill him very quickly. It'll run off just after you kill him. But then you can't kill the Pangs, and you can't kill the Raptors, and you can't kill, you know, the demons that appear. You can get Pengclaws and Demon's Blood, so I don't know. Maybe on Epic I'll do that, but not on Normal. If you're going to have a benchmark for your character in terms of its power leaving this act, I would say it's a good idea to be at least level 30. That's typically the target I shoot for, even as a veteran. So here's Yeti. All you have to do is dodge the first breath, and then it's on a cadence. It's a quicker cadence than normal. He casts it a lot. But as long as you dodge that, you'll never get frozen, and he's a pushover. Anyway, if you're level 30 by the end of this act, it'll set you up to be in a good way for Act 4. Act 4 is by far the hardest act in the game, even considering Ragnarok. So you're going to want every advantage you can get. Being level 40 by Act 5, I mean that's the threshold that was set for you by that new accomplished hero function. So it's kind of a challenge, right? To get to level 40, I find you need to do extra grinding and clearing. So I would go beyond what you see me do in this video. If you saw me farm that Ichthian spot for a while, farm it more. If you saw me farm for Demon's Blood, farm it longer. Try to tailor some of those completion bonuses to get better ones. I think that, for the most part, this game you should just walk through it from quest to quest, not full clear, and then make up for that loss of experience at your favorite grinding spots. That's what I really recommend. That's what I think is going to create the most enjoyment.
Sky smiles on the traveler. Earth gently holds his feet. Day and night are a soft song the Great Spirit sings.
Hope you enjoyed that poetry. The voice acting in this act is a bit of a caricature. You'll see from time to time. I think it's funny, though. So while I'm doing all this stuff, we'll go over kind of what I was thinking at this point with my build. Again, I'm playing a Dragon Hunter that's rune hunting. I decided I'd save Volley for last, which is the very top of the hunting mastery. I mean, the rune stuff is just too good to ignore. Immediately, I'm going for the dual wielding enabler, which I think is at the 24 slot. And I'm going for Rune Word Explode. I want to max out Rune Word Explode. Reason being is I'm an attack-based intellect character, so I'll be proccing it a lot with my attack speed, and I can scale it with intellect. If I were a rune master who, I don't know, maybe did more physical damage, and I couldn't make use of the burn on the upgrade, then I might just put 1 point on the burn. I might not max it out, but if I'm scaling intellect, that thing is going to have huge amounts of mileage for me later on. So that's what I'm going for right now. I think I took the upgrade to Sacred Rage, the 1-point wonder. I have a very high opinion of that upgrade. So if you're on the fence about it, if you're looking at the build calculator or you're looking at the build yourself, get it. The reason is that Sacred Rage has no cooldown, so it can proc and proc and proc every time you reach that 40% health threshold. And the upgrade creates a fear. Now, against certain enemies like Draconians, that'll save your life over and over and over and over again. So here's another grinding spot. Mongolian Plateau, remember that. It's the very first time you encounter these tiger men. This is a good grinding spot if you're looking for Saber-Tooth Claw. I'll put it on screen, but what makes it good is its enormous attack speed and its fast base. So this early on, it's very unlikely that you'll reach the attack speed cap for one-handed weapons. That means you're going to get full effectiveness out of the speed of the Saber-Tooth Claw. I find that even in epic mode, I can't max my attack speed, so this thing is going to give you more damage for your procs, it's going to give you more damage for your flat damage. What I mean by that is, if you're attacking faster, you're going to get the same amount of flat damage, it's just going to happen more often. So you'll find if you just look at weapons, say a very slow weapon and a very fast weapon, they'll roll with the same affix that has the same damage on it. You know, a very fast weapon might have 11 to 20 cold damage. Well, guess what? The very slow weapon does too. They don't scale it. That means you're going to get more mileage out of the fast weapon, just by default. And all forms of flat damage in this game are like that. Also, procs don't have a cooldown, so it's more likely that you'll get back-to-back procs, more procs per minute, whatever metric you want to measure, if you're using a faster weapon. And since damage in this game doesn't scale as wildly as it does in a game like PoE, you're going to get a lot of your damage from procs and flat, rather than taking a slow, high damage base and scaling it. These Yeren, they do a lot of physical damage and a lot of pierce damage. And when I say a lot, I mean a lot. You'll see them later on in the game too. Always be cautious when you see them. Don't forget about this lady. She was a bad mother and left her daughter stranded by a raptor.
My daughter!
It's free experience. Also, with Anniversary Edition, I believe they made it more likely for those quest rewards to proc a blue or a green item, or a legendary if it's done in epic or legendary. So you don't want to skip any quests. Again, I think I only skipped one quest in this entire game, and it's in Act 4. So here on the Great Wall, this is my favorite spot to farm peng claws. As you can see, there's a lot of pengs. If you're going to do it here, I recommend you lure the pengs from the slopes onto the flat ground. What'll happen otherwise is what I'm going to try to demonstrate here. It's a poor demonstration, but basically the physics engine is a little bit wacky. So the combination of that and the slope will make that thing bounce down the hill, and you'll spend minutes just waiting for that stupid thing sometimes. So save yourself some trouble and just lure all the pengs to flat ground. This boss, barely worth talking about. His shout does a lot of percent health reduction damage, so vitality resist is pretty good. Otherwise, just make sure to kill the dudes in front of him. You know, carefully pull them without aggroing the boss before you encounter him. He summons other peng too, but it's likely you have some sort of AoE clear by this point in the game, so they're no big deal. They'll die very quickly, and he can't kill you alone. You can see Peng Claw are very, very good. For some reason, they just have a higher flat damage on them than other charms and relics by this point. And usually if I do a reverse fountain farm, with the fountain coming up, I'll get, I don't know, 2 of them on average per run. So it's a very fast grind, and you can tailor your completion bonus to get even more flat, or attack speed, which I think is a bit more rare in this case. So remember this place, Shangzi. So right when you step off the Great Wall is when the game gets hard, all of a sudden, just in the blink of an eye. And it's because of these stupid Draconians. Now this isn't helped by the fact that you have to approach them from the north. Your interface sort of blocks these guys, and it's easy just to run closer than you'd want to. But this is a perfect example. So here we have these fire arrow dudes. They're a combination of fire, physical, and pierce. That's hard to mitigate altogether at this point in the game. Maybe if you picked up a pierce chest piece earlier, pierce resist, I mean, it would be doing some work for you by now. But you really just need to be ultra cautious with them. I mean, treat each of them like they're individual Nessus the Centaurs, right? So if you're running around and you're at half health and your potion's on cooldown, run around even more. Back off, re-engage later, let them separate.
We saw this.
We'll talk more about them here in a bit, but in this town, I would say
These are
get the
dangerous
portal, talk to that guy, he's the collector, he's easy to miss. He offers a quest to get a green idol.
We sell things for magic users here, not for warriors, okay?
There's that awesome voice acting again. So again, keep an eye out on those helms at the bottom there. They could be a Hallowed Helm. Any one of them could. So even if it's red, indicating you can't use it, hover over it. It's likely it's green. And the Hallowed prefix can only roll for green items. And monster infrequent.
Good day.
So do you remember Act 2, the very first quest, how in order to get the heirloom sword, the quest monster was in different locations? Well, this is one of the only other spots in the game where that can happen. Here in this forest you have, I think, 3 quests to resolve. You want to kill a spider boss, which can appear in many places, the first place being down here, immediately south. He's usually in the south regions. You want to find an idol, which can appear in 2 caves, this being one of them. By the way, this cave is the cave that, by far, in my playthroughs, provides the amulet, or the idol. It's in this mahogany chest. If you open it, there should be an idol. If there's not, then it's probably, well, it has to be in the other cave, which is the spider cave to the north. We'll run by it later on. But by now, it's likely that you haven't found the spider yet, so just be aware you're looking for the spider still, so stay to the south if that's the case. The other quest you're looking for here, the third one, is Suicide Guy. We'll find him a little bit later. And he is right next to a stone bridge leading up towards the spider cave, I believe. I think my memory has that right. He's hard to miss. At this point, it might be worthwhile to swap to a lightning resist ring. I find that, I mean, these Ichthyans are still around, some maybe right after this area, but a lot of the Draconians deal lightning damage, and it's also a shotgun projectile, so especially if you're a melee character, consider switching to a lightning resist ring. Maybe have 1 lightning and 1 cold at this point instead of having a fire res ring. Even though these archers shoot fire damage, it's really up to you to see which one is more painful for you. So I've kind of exhausted all the spawn points for this guy. They're all in the south. So here he is. Found him, finally. Incidentally, that's the same spot I found him in the last 3 times I've checked since Ragnarok. But if you go north before this stone bridge is Suicide Guy to the left. He's a missable quest, in a sense that you didn't get the quest from a village, he's just out here. And all you need to do is you need to rescue him from his fate, and you need to talk him out of it.
Why did you save me?
3 times.
Forgive me. I fear I...
So this next area is the Spider Cave area. You can see it on the mini-map. This is the other possible spawn location for the Jade Idol, for the Jade figurine. Just so you know it's there, there's a bunch of spider webs around and spiders. I mean, it's hard to miss, right? You have to walk right by it. And just be aware that these Ichthyans can spawn the Lords of the Deep. And again, they just look like regular plebs. And that's what makes them so dangerous. So maybe do some extra mouse overs, or, I don't know, try to bait out some of them with range by body pulling. That way you don't just have to run in there and hope for the best, you know. So you can see I'm not going to bother to turn in the quests. Like any other quest that is resolved after you get it, it's best just to turn them in later all at once. Unless you really need to sell or stock up on potions, just continue to chong on.
Warrior.
So this is another spot you can farm for a Saber-Tooth Claw. If you've already passed the Resurrection Shrine, this is a place that's very close to Chang'an. You can see we've just entered the city now, which means you can farm this using a portal. That's pretty rare, is Feyon again.
Hail, champion.
I guess she recovered from her previous failure.
How could you pass up such a staff as this? Or have you seen the craftsmanship on this bracelet?
I still think the Resurrection Shrine farm for the Saber-Tooth Claw is a lot better, but this is an option for you. By the way, this is the vendor that I'm going to farm the Hallowed Helm from. I watched someone play in Anniversary Edition, and they swore by this vendor, specifically this vendor. He had the most luck farming it here. So I thought I would copycat and give it a try, since I normally farm it through Monster Infrequents.
Oh, you're done?
And it actually turned out well. By the way, his channel, I think his name is The Game Attendant. He posts on the forum sometimes too. But sometimes it's good to vet your own favorite farming spots with what other people are doing. And in this case, I'm not sure I'll always use vendor farming for a Hallowed Helm, but sometimes I will. The reason I don't like it very much, and by the way, what I'm doing here is clearing all the terracotta guys. You have to clear the whole town of terracotta guys. You can't just simply go to this palace. Anyway, the reason I don't like it very much is it seems most efficient if you only check the helms, and I get so tempted. I want to check the rings and the chest pieces too, but that'll literally triple the time it takes to farm, and this thing can take an hour to farm. It's not a fun process. So all those things together make me not like it so much. Anyway, this boss, he's got a few damage types. Of course, he casts Eruption. That does fire damage, obviously. He also casts this pink sort of slow bolt. In addition to slowing you, it does a mixture of vitality and cold damage. Now, the cold's not so obvious, but a lot of abilities that look like that, this sort of pinkish projectile, do exactly that mixture of damage. So just cautiously approach him, have some cold damage resist, have some vitality resist. That just means you need one swap ring, you know, and your Demon's Blood charms. You don't even need the fire res, honestly. You can just dodge it. That's a very, very easy ability to dodge. It doesn't stun you. Anyway, this is about the time where I decide to farm for the Hallowed Helm before continuing. What's nice about it, again, is it gives vitality resist. I think it's like 50%, something huge.
Hail.
You've killed
And again, with Anniversary Edition, they made it so vitality resist gets subtracted.
How could you pass up such a staff as this? Or have you seen the craftsmanship on this bracelet?
That means it can go negative on Epic Mode and Legendary, whereas before that didn't happen. Same with Bleed Resist. Although Bleed Resist is not... It's the least useful resist in the game. Although in Act 5, it's actually pretty common. But having 50% of it on a Hallowed Helm and the +1 skills is very, very good. So this time I actually decided to go back to Jade Idol and turn in the quests. Here's the Jade Idol. And you can see by my quest log, I'm all done turning in quests now. And this is the process. This is where it begins. So you just simply go here and you look at the helmets until you get one. And this is the result after, I think, 25 minutes or so.
Such a staff as this? Or have you seen the craftsmanship on this bracelet?
And again, I'm playing with the game sped up, so this would have taken you more like 20. The vendor is very, very close to the spawn point, so this farm is mostly waiting for load times. But you can see if you stopped or paused the video just how good the Hallowed Helm is. That's a lot of very good affixes for this point in the game. So there you go, 25 minutes is definitely quicker than it takes to get an Ichthian helm to roll hollowed. Sometimes I would opt to not farm the Hallowed Helm, but really, if you're looking to maximize your character, which is part of the fun, it's part of the progression, I think. This game doesn't have an end game grind, so you might as well just take it, relatively slow. I would say you should always get a Hallowed Helm, but if you don't, it means you probably have a chromatic helm or some other helm that you really, really like. You can see I also got that Ichthian chest piece, one of those nice intellect pieces of gear that you can get from a monster. Nice and farmable, you can tailor the affixes the way you want them. This is a decent enough version for me to upgrade.
Fine arms, firm armor, fit for the Emperor's Guard. See, luck.
So again, when you're vendor farming, you kind of have to not look at rings and amulets. If you're vendor farming for a Hallowed Helm, you also have to not look at chest pieces. And my problem with that is I always want to find them together. I always want to, every time I look at a vendor, see what rings they have, because they might have the upgraded form of a swap ring that I'm looking for. They might have an annulling amulet with a extra affix, which at this point in the game, I only have an annulling amulet, no suffix. So it'd be an enormous upgrade if I can get an annulling amulet with life on it, or defensive ability on it. That would be a huge upgrade. So it's hard not to look at the other stock. But again, once I include rings, that doubles the time it takes to get a Hallowed Helm through vendor farming. If I start looking at chest pieces, all the other stuff, it's mostly load time. So I guess you can justify
Once
it.
I was a powerful general.
Yeah, here's the powerful general. He wants you to find his gear, I guess. He stored it away in this cave. I don't know what people are doing in this game. But anyway, you want to go find it. This cave is important because on Epic mode, I believe starting out, there's a mini-boss. Every act has a mini-boss. That wasn't anything added with Ragnarok, that was in the base game. In Act 1, it's the Automatoi, he's outside of the Minoan Labyrinth. In Act 2, it's Manticore. In Act 3, it's this Dragon Lich. And you can see there's a cave exit on the mini-map. You can go there right now, he won't be there on normal mode. But on Epic, just so you know, that's where you find him. And this is the part where that quest was resolved, so you can now freely exit the cave. There's a couple more quests we're going to be looking to do out here. So if you're taking stock, you're going to have a waterfall quest, you're going to have the Hermit Mage quest, and you're going to have the Three Sisters quest. So just remember all those. We haven't done any of them yet. You can see how cautious I'm being around these Draconians. Now, I ran into a pack of 2 hero Draconians, and I wasn't sure what they were doing. If Draconians are tough, you have to assume the heroes are going to be really tough. That's not always the case. And in this case, these guys were pushovers. But I mean, you really have to treat these guys like bosses. Each and every Draconian is a boss. Now, of course, they're beastmen, and there are a couple of pieces of gear in the game that do, I don't know, like minus 35% damage taken from beastmen. That sort of thing. I think there's a shield that does exactly that you can wear in normal mode. That would be enormously helpful here. There's also a charm, I think, added in Act 5 that reduces damage taken from beastmen. Again, we'll go over all the nice, unique things with Act 5 during that video.
Oh, very good. Come, stranger. We have some good things for you today.
So here's the portal. You're going to want to take this portal.
Anytime.
Because you are going to be coming back to it to turn in a quest, which is just across this bridge. Right when you cross this bridge, head southeast. I mean, it's right by the portal, okay? So don't overshoot it.
Perhaps you can...
This guy wants you to find some of his stuff, which is hidden, believe it or not, behind a waterfall. And take these woods pretty cautiously. Yeah, tiger men aren't as dangerous as Draconians, but the camera angles here aren't the best, and these guys can overwhelm you. And because of the camera angles, you might try to dodge, I don't know, the banner from a warlord and run right into Draconians and then get killed. This area always kind of lags me out with the waterfall. The cave transition's fine, though. But this is another case of having ghosts in packs of 5 that do lots of vitality damage. It's the same thing as the, what was it, the Lost Sun quest, Mystery in the Mountains. You just want to body pull a couple of these at a time. Take it cautiously. That doesn't necessarily mean slow, as you saw, I took care of it very quickly. Got a nice upgrade here. Throwing weapon. Throwing weapons are always just really good. I enjoy looking at the Ragnarok gear just because you never know what crazy things you're going to see on it. Usually it's just normal stuff, but with ridiculous numbers assigned. So we're going to turn in that quest later. It's not resolved quite yet. You have to go back to that guy, but I like efficient pathing. So if you're watching again, you'll see the exact path I take. This is the path I always take. I figured out this path a long time ago. To me, it's the most efficient. Yeah, I could use a little bit more teleporting to make it if I were speed running or whatever. And this isn't a speed run. But it's good to know in a game like this that has these big open areas that you can always just find the path that, you know, cuts it in half, right? So if you don't like how long this stuff takes, I mean, this video is going to be a little over an hour. You can always just find the optimal path, so hopefully this video helps you find a decent path for you. And again, here's those tiger men. I mean, that was just one mage. Those mages are actually very dangerous. So they're the blue Draconian mages. Not only do they have a shotgun lightning spell, but you can see that one put a yellow aura on himself. That's very, very bad because it's retaliate. Is it retaliate? No, it's not. It's reflect. So there's a subtle difference, and that difference is important when we start to talk about Typhoon, between reflect and retaliate. Retaliate damage is flat damage taken when you hit an enemy, or when an enemy hits you. So my static charge ability that I use to level with in Act 1, by the way, before you continue up towards the boss, you want to head south towards the edge of the tree line to the west. There's going to be the Hermit Mage resolution quest. So anyway, the difference between retaliate and reflect, right? So static charge is a retaliate ability. So when an enemy hits me, they take flat retaliate damage, in my case elemental. Reflect is different, so if I'm fighting an ability that is a reflect ability, like that Dragon Mage shield, I'll take a percentage of the damage I deal to that mob back to myself. It's not too bad in this game because, you know, if you're playing PoE, for instance, PoE, your damage scales much more than your health does. So reflect damage is insane because your damage is in the millions and your health is in the thousands, right? In this game, they're a little bit closer. But reflect is always very dangerous. So coming up on this boar boss, he's really nothing on normal mode. His big damage ability later on is bleed. This game seemed to give you a pass on bleed damage, in that any instance of bleed damage is pretty wimpy. I guess they didn't expect you to have any, and bleed is pretty rare. But you can see he does a stomp with some fire damage. He summons ads. But the bleed damage, which comes from his gore ability, which is a mostly melee range ability, that's going to be really, really hard hitting. It's going to surprise you. This boss is probably the biggest surprise in terms of damage. Moving into epic mode, he'll lure you into a false sense of security because you remember demolishing him on normal mode. Then all of a sudden in epic mode, you take all this degen damage, you have no idea where it came from. It's bleed. Just remember that by epic mode, you want to have your bleed at a decent place before you fight this guy. So we're not quite done here yet. I've taken a liking to doing the Three Sisters quest. I used to skip it, but not anymore. So in order to do that, you need to continue on from this palace and go into the swamp. There's going to be two other sisters. You met the first one on the way to the palace. One of them is... what's the best way to describe how to get there? You kind of head northeast-ish once you leave this cave. A little bit more east than north. And you're eventually going to reach this river, and there's a muddy crossing in the river. And it's kind of this... it's a pinched off sort of thing, right? So it's not this big open muddy area. It's just this little area you can run through. And then immediately to the north, once you get out the other end, there's a hill, and she's on the hill. So if you're watching along, you'll see it. I'll try my best to describe it if you're following along in commentary. But here, it's the Jinghe Wetlands, and all we're interested here in is that Three Sisters quest. So you can see I'm running sort of north of east a little bit. I mean, besides baiting back these Tigerman warlords. They come in two varieties, by the way. One of them has Onslaught and Throwing Knives in an AoE. The other one has Banner. So here's that Shallows I'm talking about. And she's flailing her arms wildly. You can't miss her. Hey, I'll help you out if you say please.
Freeze.
Again, voice acting's a bit of a caricature. So her sister is to the east. You want to go due east. What's dangerous about this area is the fact that all of these guys are quest monsters. Really, the only dangerous one is the Warlord. He can spawn with decent weapons, and if he's the Onslaught variety, it's going to be very, very painful, and it could kill you. They do a lot of damage. You have to talk to the sister twice, so don't forget to do that like I did.
Oh.
And then you just simply go back to the second sister, the flailing one.
Oh.
Once we've done that, we want to go back to the Waterfall Quest Cave. You can see I took the wrong portal. We want to go back to the Waterfall guy. We're not going to the cave, we're just going to the guy. I misspoke. And there. At this point, we've done all the side quests, and we're ready to go attack Typhon. So Typhon is the hardest part. Well, I'm going to say that in Act 4.
See how finely wrought this ring is?
So I'm going to say he's not the hardest part of the game, but he's the hardest boss in the game. So the hardest act in the game is Act 4. But Typhon is leagues above all the other acts in the game. I would rather fight 3 Hades than a single Typhon. He's just very annoying, does enormous damage in a wide variety of damage types. And in order to counter them, medium resist isn't good enough. You need to max resist all these things. So he's a huge annoyance. That's compounded by the fact that if you're a pet build, you're going to get annihilated, especially if you're using wolves to this point. The reason for that is his big ability that you want to resist is a vitality resist ability. He leeches life. The life leech is actually an AoE.
By now. Why carry what you can put down?
So it's, I believe, a cone ability. So if you have wolves and he targets you with a life leech, or he targets a wolf with a life leech, it's likely that multiple enemies, or multiple of your allies, are going to get leeched together. And those are going to top him off instantly. Even if you have vitality resist, your wolves likely don't. Now, if you're playing Nature Rune Mastery, you can buff your wolves to give them bit res.
Like this anywhere.
But it's still, if they have 50% bit res,
you're done?
it's still a lot of leech. So it's going to be a very slow, drawn-out fight, even if you've prepared for it. So that kind of sucks. Also, if you're using Lich, you can use Wraith Shell in order to protect your Lich against the meteors. The problem is that the meteors do so much damage that not even Wraith Shell can really save their lives. You need a little bit of extra health on your Lich in order to survive that. And the problem with the Lich is the Lich does damage by standing still. That means he's not going to dodge those meteors, and trust me, Typhon's going to know he's there. In order to get to Typhon, you need to go through these woods here. And you're going to see here pretty shortly why you need to respect those Draconians, and exactly what happens if you decide that you can take 2 packs at once. By the way, you start to encounter harder forms and different forms of Draconians at this point. So I go ahead and I lure the first pack, and I get netted and dead. Very quickly dead. So I didn't know there was a netting variety of those Draconians. So, TIL for me, but for you, you want to treat each of them like a boss. So don't aggro 2 packs like I did. That was very, very dumb no matter what. I could have survived if I hadn't have done that. But also just realize that these things can spawn in very different combinations, and some of those combinations are deadly. They share spawns, so not every pack spawn is the same per game. You might have, coming up in this cave, mages mixed with spear chargers and other things, and those will kill you very, very quickly, mixed with frost archers, for instance. You can see I was having a heck of a time. All of these guys were on synchronous auto attacks. So if I got hit by one of them, I got hit by all of them. That's very dangerous. You want them ideally to be shooting at on a different pace. That way you can dodge at least some of the projectiles. Most of the enemies in this cave are pretty annoying. You don't have to fight them. I think I do, just because I'm a little behind on experience. By far the most deadly are these spear wielders. So I beat them by stutter stepping. I kind of favor this approach of watching the enemy animation and then stepping away right before they hit. That's a little bit different than stutter stepping. In this case, these guys are so fast that I just stutter step. If I can dodge 1 or 2 of their hits, that'll save me from death, and it's pretty reliable. Zombies and skeletons, by contrast, no big deal. I mean, there's these liches that appear in pairs. They could be poison or frost or fire or whatever. Those can be pretty deadly. but they're also very slow and they have a very short leash, so you can simply run by them. Here they are now. I decided to kill them. In later difficulties, maybe just run by them. This is your last area to farm Demon's Blood, so if you haven't by now, and you're about to fight Typhon, at the next Resurrection Fountain, you're going to want to grab it and reverse farm those fire spirits. There's one other area that looks exactly like that, sort of Onyx Bridge area. You can farm it there too, but really you should have used that other spot that I used, or the spot in Act 2, or possibly Shadow Mall in Act 1. This is your last chance, though. If you don't do it here with a Res Shrine farm, you're going to have to use a portal farm, and those are much less effective. So you can see I grabbed that Rune Explosion ability. It has a 2-second stun. That delay is enough for me to pick off a few of those spear wielders, even archers. It's a good one-point wonder for now. Eventually, I think I'll use it a lot more often, though. You can see in this area I choose to go south. That's because I've done this place many times. The layout's the same, it's not procedurally generated or anything like that. So that means you know exactly where to go if you've done this before. This is the most dangerous part of the cave because of the camera angle, and because you start seeing the most deadly spawn combinations of these Draconians. I mean, retaliate mages and spear wielders, that's pretty bad. Again, if you can have some pierce res, especially on your chest piece or something like that, with, I don't know, a boar relic with a completion bonus of 10 or 15% pierce, whatever it is on normal mode, that's going to help you out a little bit here. It's hard to mitigate physical damage, so any help you can get in the other damage components that these guys deal, the better off you're going to be in terms of your own survival. That's why pierce resist is so important, even if you try to convince yourself that, oh, pierce damage is only 15-20% of the enemy's damage type. If you can resist it at all, it might be life or death for you. Ideally, you would want to resist physical damage all the time, but that's very, very difficult to do. I don't find that fighting these sepulchral worms is worth it. They just have tons and tons of health. Anyway, here's Typhon. Before you kill him, you need to kill this Telkeen. This Telkeen isn't so bad. I mean, all he does is he throws telekinesis bricks at you, which deal physical damage. Any projectiles he deals will be a mixture of cold and vitality, just like the Terracotta Wizard. And he uses those attacks pretty often. I find mostly he just throws physical bricks at me. But he can also summon 3 fire spirits. And those fire spirits deal fire damage, with some physical. But on higher difficulties, those guys can overwhelm you. Usually if a boss summons, then all you have to do to counter it is to look at the animation, watch the creatures spawn in. You can kind of see them before they start wildly hitting you, and just kind of back off. That'll funnel the creatures in towards you, and they'll sort of trip over one another. You can often kill them before they even hit you. That's the best way to deal with any summon mechanic on a boss. Incidentally, it's also good for fighting packs of big monsters like Minotaur packs. You just kind of funnel them towards you. Their vectors will all, you know, dial in directly on you, and they'll trip over each other. It's kind of like in StarCraft 1, where if you select a whole group of dragoons, 12 of them or whatever, and just click somewhere on the map, they'll just trip over each other. There's always a huge pain.
Huh? What's that?
Same idea here, except you're trying to manipulate that similar AI into doing that to you. You can take advantage of that. It's less damage. So you can see I'm just kind of preparing. I'm not preparing so much for Typhon, his mobs leading up to him. I'm just preparing for Typhon. I would suggest getting 100 potions at least. It's very annoying to run out of potions on Typhon. You can see my resists are pretty good. I've got 80% fire, 80% lightning, 80% vit.
A mage cannot find goods like this anywhere.
Those are all the most important resists.
Oh, you're done?
So I guess we should talk about what Typhon actually does. Real quick with Ragnarok, they messed with the leash distances on certain monsters. That includes Typhon. You can no longer cheese him as easily with a bow by luring him to the edge of his platform, you know, in the narrows, and shooting him and letting him leash back and then baiting him forward again. It's harder to do. But as for his abilities, he has a lot of abilities, and like I said, they're assigned to multiple elements. So he's got a lightning projectile that does enormous damage. You need lightning resist, ideally capped. Sometimes it's very hard to dodge that ability, and you don't want it to be the thing that kills you as you're running around waiting for your potion to cool down. He also does a fire breath that has a combination of a % health reduction effect, so vitality and fire both counter that. It's definitely a good idea to have max fire res. He does a meteor attack, which is very fast to zone in. It's a lot like Barmanu, in that you can see him animate. He'll telegraph that ability, and you simply sidestep it. All the meteors land in one place. It's not a shower like a big AoE. They all land right on top of your head. Mostly physical damage. It will kill you, just period. So dodge it. He also does a spike ability, so he puts spikes all over his body. It's hard to see if you're not looking for it, so I recommend that you run around at the start of the fight, your first pull, and just wait for him to cast it. You'll start to see what it looks like, and you'll hear what it sounds like. But it's a mixture of a reflect and a retaliate. So we went over that distinction before, but the reflected portion is physical, it's pierce, some bleed. So that stuff, if you're an attack-based character, an attack-based melee character, that stuff is going to happen on top of the reflect. So if you're a mage or an archer, you're only going to see the reflect portion, the damage reflect. But if you're a melee character, you're going to get the damage reflect and the retaliate. So it's just an extra thing to be cautious of if you're melee, especially if you're, I don't know, warfare mastery and you deal tons of damage, then that's gonna kill you. If you do tons of damage by having high attack speed, which is probably the case, then it's gonna kill you very fast. You're not gonna have time to react to it. So you need to see him cast the spike ability and to react to it before he starts using other spells on you. And the way I kill him is I very cautiously get him to 50%, dodging all his stuff. I'm very patient on this fight. And once he's at 50%, I'll wait for him to use his spike ability, his retaliate. And right when he uses that, right when it goes on cooldown, I'll go grab the 2 shrines, the battle marker and the frost shrine. And I'll go down and immediately start attacking him. That way I know he can't cast his retaliate right when I'm all buffed up. That would get me killed. And usually with that combo I can finish him off. The remaining 50% should be pretty easy. If I'm not as confident in my damage, I might wait for 30%. I mean, that's all you gotta do. You can see this fight is a total chaotic mess. Again, the game is sped up. But he's going to drain your mana, he's going to drain your health. He's going to cast meteors every few seconds. He's going to have projectiles to follow it up. I've had instances before where I've run around to get the shrines, and he's cast a meteor, like, right on the stairs. I have nowhere to go. I can only get hit by the meteors, which is kind of what happened there. It was a bit of a clenching moment. But you can see I stabilized, and at this point I have shrine buffs, and he's a goner. Dead. So again, I've had a lot of practice with this fight, and he's still very rippy. I mean, that guy can kill me so easily, so I'm full attention on this fight. It's, for me, the hardest part of the game. So you want to be prepared for it, you want to practice it. You can get scrolls to help you out. I didn't find them to be particularly effective, but maybe in epic mode you can use the Act 5 scrolls from normal mode, which are very good. You'll see them in the Act 5 videos. Anyway, we're going to get into Act 4 next video, so stick around for the tips there. I would say if you're going to look for any videos tips, you're going to want Act 4s. So thanks for watching.